So if you're interested in that, you can certainly check with me. You can also check with one of my guys in the back, Glenn Hammers. When we get done with this, and we're going to get pulled in a number of directions, but Glenn can answer your questions on that as far as employment and everything I just spoke about. So those are the big programs that we're doing right now. I will say that the governor had agreed, or he did agree to pick up the debris, 100% of the debris bill for the city of Fort Myers Beach. He did that 2 months ago. So all of your debris is being paid for by the state of Florida. That is not a burden to the city. They don't have to worry about that. There's a number of other things that the state of Florida is doing as far as helping your local government get back on their feet and being able to respond to this disaster. And we're committed. We're going to be here. I have been, out of the last 71 days, I've only been outside of Fort Myers about 8 of those days, and 5 of those was responding to Hurricane Nicole. So we're here. We're going to be here for the next 3 to 5 years. Again, yes, I said that correctly. You heard that correctly. We will have members of the Florida Division of Emergency Management. I will be coming in probably every week for at least 2 to 3 days a week for the next year, and then over the next 2-3 years beyond that, we'll continue to be here. For instance, I have to go next week to Miami to check on our Hurricane Irma issue and our Hurricane Irma project, and that was coming up on 5 years ago. I'm sorry, that was over 5 years ago. So again, you've got the commitment of Florida Division of Emergency Management. I know you got the commitment of FEMA. I know you have the commitment of your local government. We're going to be here with you through the entire process. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director. Before I move on, I forgot to recognize in attendance tonight is also our Vice Mayor Adderholt, Councilor Woodson, Councilor King. I have not seen Councilor Beach. Also, before I introduce Mr. Vogel, next door there are FEMA representatives. If you have questions on your specific case, they can pull up your specific case for you. They're the tent directly behind you. Mr. Vogel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Bob Vogel. I'm the FEMA's Division Supervisor for Lee County. Just before I get started, I just want to acknowledge that you all have been through a truly horrendous and catastrophic disaster with impacts, as you all know and are feel with and living day in, day out. But I also want to recognize the mayor, your fire department, who was also, many of them survivors themselves, as well as the administration of the town of Fort Myers, and all of you and the businesses. And we recognize just how much this has impacted this community. And we feel that every day. I want to introduce a few folks in the room also that are here to answer questions. Tim Russo over in the corner is from FEMA's Region 4. He is the floodplain manager and national insurance manager for FEMA's Region 4 out of Atlanta, which is responsible for Florida. In the back of the room, you have Talan and Penny. They are folks that can look up all of your cases with advanced information on anybody that has a direct housing eligibility. I know there's a lot of issues there. We'll get to those questions later. But they can look up your specific case and provide details on that, as well as other folks here. And then finally, I just want to, I'll turn it over to Tahita Mateen here from the SBA, who's a big partner for FEMA in these disaster recoveries. As with Kevin, I was here on September 29th, and I will be here well into next year to help support. We're committed to the recovery, and we'll work hand in hand with the state throughout that recovery for multiple years. Progress, like things like debris, vehicles, and vessels, has been made. I know you all know there's a really long ways to go in terms of your own personal homes and structures and personal property and damages, as well as the impact on the businesses here and the community. We're committed to staying in that game with you. And this recovery has to be locally executed, but it's federally, state-led and federally supported when Kevin tells us what we can do to help. Since September 29th, just to give you the numbers of where we are for Fort Myers Beach, we've had 7,190 registrations for FEMA assistance. We've conducted 5,285 inspections. We have provided so far to date $46,464,158 in individual assistance support. Of that, $40,593,000 is in homeowners assistance to conduct their own repairs. $5,870,000 is for other needs, and $6,141,000 is provided as rental assistance for those that can rent and find additional rental properties on their own. I want to talk a little bit about direct housing because I know that's a big issue here and a lot of the impacted areas of Lee County. Direct housing solutions are unique for every single individual. You have to have at least $12 per square foot of damage to your structure on Fort Myers, given the catastrophic level. Many probably eligible for direct housing. That doesn't mean trailer. A lot of people think it means trailer. Direct housing is a couple of different things. We conduct multi-family lease and repair, which is where we go into a multi-unit, could be 2-unit, 4-unit, 16-unit, whatever it is, and FEMA will help that owner repair their multi-family unit in return for leasing those units out to people in need. That's a program that we have. It takes a while, obviously, to do that. The second program we have is direct lease. That's where FEMA works with anybody that has rental property that wants to put it into a rental program with FEMA, and we will pay that lease on behalf of survivors to be in lease units and apartment. One of the things you can do, and I know Dan has been doing this and his staff has been doing this amazingly just since Dan recently took over here, is providing us the names and information of owners and would have properties here on Fort Myers Beach, because our goal is always to put you back as close to where you lived previously, if at all possible. The final option is what we talk about is our temporary housing units. And again, it could range from a travel trailer, as Kevin's said, as well as manufactured home units. To do that, we do that in a couple of different ways. Again, to try to keep people as close to home in their damaged building while they're trying to repair, we can try to see if it will work on your private site next to your current structure. That's a very challenging process. It requires a lot of different steps, everything from inspections to utilities to hookups, and evaluating where it is within the floodplain and whether it would be allowed in that floodplain area, specifically that specific spot, based upon the base flood elevation. The second option is commercial sites. We have now visited over 213 commercial parks in Lee County. There are only 18 possible locations that have rental units, and many, unfortunately, of those rental units were reserved by people probably in the north or northwest or northeast that bring their trailers down here about now and put deposits last year and haven't released them. So we're working with a lot of trailer parks to see if we can get additional commercial sites. The final option, but it is a lengthy option, is to build a dedicated group site, and that is where we actually construct a trailer park in open land with utilities, electric, and everything. That can take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to go through that process to create one. We've looked at over 203 potential group sites in Lee County. We have found so far 12 that are possible and are continuing to work on those possible sites. Those are the options that currently exist. I talked to the County Board of Commissioners recently about this. Most, if not all, of Fort Myers Beach is in a floodplain. Tim's our expert. He can take specific questions on that later. But by law, there are specifically 2 places we cannot put a trailer or have a multifamily unit repair or do a direct lease. And those are in what we call the coastal high hazard vector zones, VE zones in the floodplain language, as well as in an actual floodway. Other than that, in the floodplain, we will look at every possible site and look where we may be able to place a unit if it is possible, and if we can't find other options like direct lease or commercial pads or other possible options. So that is our current housing program and how it works. I want to move on and allow people to ask specific questions about that. I'm sure there are a lot about our process. Before I do, I want to talk a little bit about another problem that we know as we went to Pine Island. We heard this, and a change we recently made. We know that part of the process is that as you go through the process of getting registered, you have to get an inspection. Our inspectors, we are doing inspections in Puerto Rico, Missouri, Kentucky, Louisiana, Alaska, multiple states with disasters. So FEMA has a contract as well as FEMA inspectors to conduct those. Many of those individuals live in California, Montana, Wisconsin. So people get that telephone number, they think it's spam, and they delete it. One of the bigger reasons why people are stalled in the system is they didn't respond to 3 requests from an inspector. I call that inspector hell, because you may not know that if you don't go through our DRC 10 and find out about that. You just don't know, you haven't got a call back. So we have, and in places like Pine Island where there's not enough cell phone coverage, a lot of times the call doesn't go through, so it automatically goes into voicemail, and you may not receive that. So we have just made sure it changed as of this week. You will get a text message, and proactively we're calling every single individual that's in Lee County that had what we call a 3-strike and withdrawal. It's not really a withdrawal, it just means you're stalled because you don't have an inspection, so you don't move. We're going to proactively call everybody that's had those 3 calls and is stalled in the system and find out where they are, what their current status, whether they have a current need for an inspection. And then we're going to also bring in FEMA inspectors as well as some of our contractors to actually proactively do inspections with our disaster survivor assistance teams on the ground in the neighborhoods, door to door, until we get those inspections done. So that is in progress right now. And then the final thing that we're doing about the trailer situation is, again, Kevin and I, when we listen to these town halls, we take the information back and we work them through our joint field office up in Tampa and try to figure out how we can improve and get better. Every disaster is different, and I'll be the first to say that we've learned some very difficult lessons here about how our processes work. I call it false hope when you get a call from FEMA and you find out you've been approved for direct household assistance. What most people hear is not all those other options I just talked about. They think trailer. I've been approved, I'm eligible for direct housing assistance. Doesn't mean a trailer, it means all of the options I described. Trailers as one of the last options. But what they hear is trailer. Then somebody shows up because they have contract inspectors that are experts about building codes, zoning requirements, setbacks, all those types of issues. They come out and measure a lot. And they may say to somebody, and they're not a FEMA person, they're a contractor, they may say to somebody, I think the trailer might fit here. What do you hear? Trailer. May fit here. The final part in that process is you have to go through a review for environmental, historic, and preservation. Environmental, historic, and preservation, as well as floodplain review to actually review your specific property and see where it is within the floodplain. And again, those zones I mentioned earlier, if it's not one of those, it may be possible. But if your lot is a certain size and can't fit a trailer and your base flood elevation is a certain height, we may not be able to lift a trailer 8, 9, 10 feet into the air on your lot and provide an actual ramp that you can get into your trailer with. So that may, at that point, be a no-go. The problem is you've now been going through this process for a month and you have no idea that you have been given false hope. That has to stop immediately. So our team is doing a review on the front end to look at that information first, to manage expectations when they conduct these interviews, and there may be up to 22 interviews with folks until we determine what your needs are to see if a trailer is an option. But if we find out that you're in a zone like that, we will say we go through that process, but that may not be possible in your specific location, as opposed to finding out at the end of the process. Because that's a fail, and that is a fail for FEMA. All right, so that's something that we were working on in terms of how we work through this. We'll take some specific questions. I'm going to give SBA an opportunity to talk about their programs. Back to you, Dan.